Good evening, hockey fans, and welcome to episode 4 of Blackhawks Banter, brought to you by the Hockey Writers. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and connect with us across all major social networks. Thank you to those who already do follow along and who are watching live with us as we speak. My name is Shaun Filippelli, the only member of this team who knows that we don't actually say A after every sentence up here in Canada. Joining me tonight is my talented Blackhawks writing crew. First, we have the always optimistic Gail Kauchak. Gail, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having us.
Of course. Next, the pro on all things prospects, Greg Boysen. What's up, Greg?
How's it going?
Good, good. And Alexander Nylander's number one fan, Brooke LoFurno. How's things, Brooke?
Things are going well, Shaun.
Good. Glad to hear it. For those tuning in, if you checked out our preview post for the show, you saw that we touched on a few topics to give you a tease of some of the things we would debate tonight. We will expand on those topics and we'll bring a little bit more to the table as well. Let's get right into it. So earlier this week, NBC Sports recently released their assessment of the winners and losers this offseason. They looked at things like trades, contracts, general roster moves, and anything that would have affected a team or an organization. Some organizations that made the list include Colorado Avalanche, Edmonton Oilers, Buffalo Sabres, Vegas Golden Knights, and even our very own Chicago Blackhawks. Unfortunately, of those mentioned, the Blackhawks are the only one labeled as losers. Their trading of Brendan Saad was the primary focus, which it was for most of us, as to what they did wrong this offseason. But they also did things that included gaining Nikita Zadorov in that trade, not signing Drake Caggiula, re-signing Dominik Kubalik, seeing Corey Crawford walk, and acquiring a few new faces along the way. So what I want to put out to all of you guys here with me tonight is, when reflecting on their offseason thus far, if you could have one do-over for how a specific scenario played out, how would you rewrite it? Or if you'd create a whole new script, what more would you do? I'll kick this one off myself, actually. Me personally, I haven't been shy about the confusion around acquiring Zadorov and how he fits in their rebuild. I've said that all along. I've said it on this show. I'd never really understood how he fits, being a 26, 27-year-old defenseman coming into a team that's looking to redevelop and give their youth a chance. And he sort of comes into a situation where they don't need that kind of a presence. So I've never really understood that. However, I want to take this in a little bit of a different direction. And I've taken some cues from Gail along the way where I'm trying to be a little bit more optimistic. So I'll try that here. I want to talk about something that they did right, which was the re-signing of Kubalik. I think it was certainly necessary for a lot of reasons, but where I will sort of pick and prod is the fact that I was never happy with seeing that it was only 2 years. Me personally, I would have rather seen it being a 4 or 5 year deal, even if that meant taking away some of the money on that deal, because I think that to keep a talent like that around, I don't think he was a fluke. So to keep that kind of talent around through this rebuild would be necessary. So when they're ready to compete and contend, he's there and he's primed to play even better. Gail, we'll go straight to you. What do you think?
Well, I have to say that I was not happy with the Saad trade. I think that Saad is a excellent two-way player. He's consistent. He brings a physical edge, and I think that he is going to. Our team is going to. The Blackhawks will be hurt without him, but that is actually not my answer. So I don't want to get too carried away with that. I think that if I had one thing to redo again, it would be to get Corey Crawford to sign for 1 year. I think that was the problem, that the two could not come to terms because he wanted at least 2 years and the Blackhawks were only willing to give him 1 year. But gosh, if he would have been able to go for that 1 year, if he would have gone for that, then I think the Blackhawks would be so much better off. You know, they're going in blind with these three inexperienced goaltenders. And if they just had Crawford for that 1 more year to kind of ease in the next goaltender, I think that could do wonders for them. And I think that's where they're really going to hurt most this year.
Yeah, definitely tough to lose him, but I'm curious, Gail, on that answer. Would you have offered him a little bit more money if you would have accepted a 1 year deal?
It was 3.5, I think, that they offered, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that you could maybe go with like 4, not much more, you know. 4 for 1 year. It's my understanding that they didn't talk. They didn't go back and forth. Who knows? Maybe he would have signed for that if they would have said, okay, let's go with 4. Let's go with 4.
Definitely a loss of a month off for sure. Greg, what do you think? What would you have done?
Well, as much as I hate the bungling of the goaltending situation from the trade deadline forward, personally, I would have traded both Leonard and Crawford at the trade deadline if you were just going to let them walk for nothing. But that's a debate for another episode. If I had one do-over, I would redo the Brendan Saad trade. It wouldn't be not doing the Brendan Saad trade. I'm fine with that. I'm a huge Brendan Saad fan. I think he did a lot of little things that don't show up on the score sheet that need to be done in order to be successful as a team. They're going to miss him. But if you are rebuilding and with the salary cap situation, he was the obvious choice as far as who gets traded. What I would do over is I wouldn't have traded him for Nikita Zadorov. I would have traded him for picks and prospects like a rebuilding team should. You got to get more assets. And yes, Zadorov could be a great player for the Hawks. He might fit in and he might be great, but he's not the S. I just think you could have got more or a better return. You look, not even a couple days later, the Avalanche again, they trade for Devin Taves. They give up 2 second-round draft picks. Where was that when Brendan Saad was on? Like, seriously, Joe Sakic has got some serious voodoo devil magic going on for some of the moves he could pull off. So that's the only thing I would have done differently, was not trade Saad for an NHL player per se at this point, a roster player, but trade him for future assets. And then you get the full cap relief. As opposed to just half or whatever it is. So yeah, that would be my do-over.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the thing. My disdain with the Zadorov move wasn't about him as a player. I think he could do well on a team contending, like you're saying, but the Hawks just aren't them. And keeping $1 million of that salary doesn't help. So I agree. Brooke, what are you thinking?
That goaltending situation just doesn't sit right with me at all. But I might have a different view than Gail and Greg, and I'm going to say that I wouldn't have ever traded Leonard. And because he's younger than Crawford, and I feel like he could have maybe solidified our net for a few years to come. And Crawford, I love him. I would have loved to keep him too, but I felt like if we were going to trade Leonard, then you chose Crawford out of the two. So you should have been able to make something work with Crawford, and the fact that we had 2 all-star goalies to absolutely nothing is just mind-boggling to me. I don't know how we messed that up so bad. So my thing is I would definitely try to keep Leonard and maybe try to move Crawford, or it just had to be one or the other, and then we got nothing. So I would redo that whole goalie situation.
So good point. But speaking to Leonard, I'm curious about something, because I've heard that around. A lot of people would rather have kept him, and understandably so. But if the Hawks had kept him, obviously he's looking for a big payday. Would it have made sense, do you think, for them to throw that kind of money at him with the development coming up for this team?
Well, I think that the contract that he got from Vegas was very doable. And because there's so much uncertainty around our pipeline, we don't know how Malcolm Subban's going to do. We don't know how Delia is going to do with a full season under them. I think it would have made sense to do that for right now.
Yeah, fair enough. So pay to get the security, absolutely.
But that contract wasn't really there at that time. That was kind of before the flat salary cap, and I think he was asking for a whole lot more.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, probably.
Well, sticking with the offseason, I want to take a look at a little bit of a rapid fire here for our crew. As we all come to terms with the fact that the team really is not looking like they're going to do a lot of winning for the foreseeable future, I think we're all understanding and coming to terms with that. Let's take it a little bit beyond where they'll rank in the overall rankings by the end of the season. The roster is not shy of talent. We know that. They have proven veterans like Patrick Kane, and they have potential stars like Adam Boqvist. This is a young lineup. They have a lot of growing up to do, which means progress is inevitable, and that's exciting. That's a good thing. So as we do try to remain optimistic about what comes next, I want us to all take our best to guess at some quick rapid fire questions here. All I'm looking for is a one-word answer, a name, or a yes or no, whatever is applicable. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go through these questions one at a time. I'm going to go to each of you. You're going to give me that quick answer, and we'll move on, okay? So we'll make it pretty seamless here. First up, In hoping that Chicago can keep things exciting even as they lose along the way, who will lead the team in points next season? Brooke?
Patrick Kane.
Gail?
Patrick Kane.
Greg?
Alex DeBrincat.
And I'm going to stick with Greg and say Alex DeBrincat.
I thought you were going to say Nylander for a second.
That's
I
a
was like,
different
oh no,
question.
Greg.
This is a serious exercise, bro. Come on.
Shifting to their back end, as fans anticipate a shift in defensive leadership is due, which defenseman will log the most average ice time? Brooke?
Connor Murphy.
Gail?
Connor Murphy.
Greg?
Sticking with the Murphy.
Murphy sweeps the board, so do I. Finally, as intriguing as the mystery surrounding goaltending may be for onlookers, maybe not for us as fans, will this team end the year with an undisputed starting goaltender? Brooke?
Yes.
Gail?
No.
Greg?
Nope.
And I'm going to go 3-1 with a no. Let's take things overseas. We're going to, well, in Canada, but overseas for this particular player, we're going to look at the World Juniors a little bit. We've talked a lot about Kirby Dach in Canada to that point, from his invite to predicting his production to his first impressions at camp and all the good things that surround what that means for the Blackhawks. However, he's not the only Blackhawk who will be participating in this important tournament. Lucas Reichel, Chicago's first-round pick from the 2020 NHL entry draft, has been called upon by Germany for the second year in a row. In his first year, he compiled 5 points in 7 games and had a pretty impressive showing for a Germany team that's widely considered an underdog. But then again, the world is catching up and every game does matter in this tournament. So with that said, how do you predict Reichel will perform in the upcoming World Juniors, and can he be impactful enough to help Germany win more than the one game they won last year? Gail, we'll start with you on this one.
First off, I'd like to say that thank you for bringing this up, because I'm really excited about the World Juniors, and it was nice to kind of do a little bit of research on it and find out. I'm actually getting to the point where at the Hockey Writers here, they're doing previews for every team, and it's been kind of interesting to click on and read those. So check that out. But Reichel, I think that he's going to come in with abundance of confidence. This is his second year. And, now that he's been drafted 17th, I think that he is going to be excited, and he's going to want to prove that it was no fluke that he was drafted where he was. And what did he have? I can't remember if you said that he had 3 goals and 2 assists.
3 goals and 2 assists last year, yeah.
In 7 games. So let's hope that they can win a few more games, and B, let's hope that he can get more goals, more assists. Let's see if he can step it up, and I'm looking forward to watching him, and I'm sure that he's excited about the whole thing as well. I think he's supposed to be on the top line, is what his prediction is too. Yeah,
I would imagine. And, I'll segue from there, Gail, because I agree with everything you just said. I mean, he already had an impressive showing last year, and this is a young kid. I mean, he played last year, 17, 18 years old, and he's going to look to build on that. Germany's going to rely on him. He is going to be logging a lot more minutes than he already did, and he's going to be playing on their top line. So as a Blackhawks first-round draft pick, I mean, this kid's coming in, and Hawks are his favorite team. Patrick Kane's his favorite player. There's excitement all around this draft pick, and I think that's going to translate, like you said, Gail, into increased confidence for him, and we're going to see that on the ice. Chicago scouting staff has already pointed at Reichel as being the best in their prospect pool in a lot of areas for his speed, skill, and smarts, to name a few. So I think that as we see those areas only improve, he's going to bring that to Team Germany. And again, I mean, obviously Germany's an underdog. Clearly, we know that. But I think with players like Reichel on that roster, it's going to keep them in every game, and it's going to keep things exciting and at least keep it interesting along the way. So I agree with everything you said, Gail. And then, Brooke, what do you think? And what's Reichel going to be able to do this year?
So first off, are we all going to be able to nicely cheer for Team Germany, since it's not Team Canada or Team USA? We can all mutually agree with that one.
It
Yes.
depends who gets fired.
My father's family is from Germany, so go Germany.
Nice.
Woo! Germany. Okay, so Reichel is someone who, I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't overly excited about when we drafted him, and it wasn't exactly about him. It was just because I didn't know much about him, to be honest. So I was like, I don't know about this guy, but he's growing on me the more I'm learning about him. And when I think about his impact on Team Germany, I keep thinking about this analogy probably makes no sense, but it makes sense to me, that when I was looking at his stats, he kind of reminds me a little bit of Ovechkin, where he has kind of this range where he can score His goals are usually a lot more than his assists. So my thinking is that he'll be a great playmaker and goal scorer for Team Germany. And I think he can definitely help them advance higher than they did last year for sure. So I'm excited to see what he does with that and if he builds off of last year.
Yeah, I mean, this kid's got it all from the looks of it. So as he grows and develops here and even just matures another year of his life, it's going to be to Germany's benefit. Greg, anything to add? What do you think about Reichel's addition here to Team Germany?
I'm excited to watch him because, to be honest with you, I haven't seen a whole lot of actual game action of him, outside of the highlight packages you see on YouTube, which, let's face it, everybody is a superstar in those things. You only get to see their major achievements in those things. So it'll be fun to watch him in game situations and playing against real tough competition. His line should be exciting. I'm assuming, and it looks like he'll be on the same line with Tim Stützle, who is recovering from a broken arm, but he was drafted 3rd overall by the Senators and was one of the top players in this past draft. And I also think Jason Peterka is the other big 4. He was drafted early in the 2nd round by Buffalo. I think those 3 guys will make up their top line, and that should be a pretty formidable top line, and it should be fun to watch the creativeness and scoring ability of if they're together. As far as Germany's overall chances, they're going to be the underdogs in probably all their games, so maybe they can use that as a chip on their shoulder, pull out. Everybody loves an upset, so maybe we'll see something fun. I think they could have been a lot better and maybe even a dark horse to sneak into a medal game had the Red Wings not been party poopers and let Mo Seider play on defense. He definitely would have made that defense a lot better. Their defense is kind of there right now, and a guy like Seider would have made them far more competitive. So they're going to struggle, but I'll be watching them. There's enough interest there to even if they're down 4 or 5 goals, I'll keep the game on.
Yeah, I think we can all collectively agree Reichel's got some excitement ahead of him, and he'll bring some excitement to that team. So, we're fortunate here coming from North America, Canada, and U.S. do a pretty good job of staying competitive. But I don't know about you guys. I actually enjoy seeing the competition grow. So I like seeing that there's players that are around the world who are up and coming and making good names for themselves in other nations, because it keeps things competitive and keeps our teams honest. So I'm all for it. And, let's see how good Germany can do, but just not against Canada or the U.S.
Agreed.
To those who are just tuning in, welcome to episode 4 of Blackhawks Banter. I am your host, Shaun, and joining me is Gail, Greg, and Brooke. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow across social media. Sticking with some prospects, and more specifically non-rostered prospects, we know that the Blackhawks do not have the same depth that some other organizations have the fortune of having. Most teams who are currently struggling have a lot to look forward to in their prospect pool, even if only a fraction of that pool actually pans out and makes it into pro. Whereas the Hawks need a little bit more hoping that most of their up-and-comers turn into something more given the current direction of the franchise. However, it's not all bad for Chicago. We've gone over this. We've had some posts about this. We've talked about this. There is some prospects, including Reichel, who do have a bright spot on them as far as what this organization can become. So as we look towards some of their talented athletes that they do have in the system, I wanted to position this to you. Chicago is likely to be in a position next season to allow for a lot more opportunity for their younger players to get into this lineup to develop. Whether out of necessity or opportunity, who do you see as being the first of that prospect pool of their non-rostered players to make it into regular season action with the team? Greg, I'll start with you.
I think the easiest picks based on last season in Rockford would be a Philip Kurashev or a Mackenzie Entwistle. Those are probably the 2 prospects that are most NHL ready. Not saying they're going to make it, but they'll definitely compete for spots right out of camp. They may both make it out of camp. Who knows? We'll see how that goes. So those would be my first obvious picks. Possibly the guy you see first could be a Nicholas Bodine. I don't think he'll make the camp I don't think he'll make the team right out of camp, especially with Ian Mitchell coming over. He's kind of the forgotten prospect a little bit. But but I got a feeling he'll get up there eventually, especially if as the season goes along and you can find the trade market open up for veteran defenders like a Calvin DeHaan or a Connor Murphy. Those guys are prime trade candidates at the deadline. The teams always overpay for guys like that right before the playoffs. So maybe if Stan can jump on that and move one of those veteran guys, a guy like Bodine can come in and contribute. And a dark horse pick, I know it wasn't part of the question, but I would keep an eye on Evan Barrett this year. He's coming to play professionally for the first time. He's going to play in Rockford. Not saying we're going to see him in Chicago, but if things get out of hand or there's a rash of injuries, why the heck not? Put him up there for a couple of games and let's see what he can do.
Yeah, Barrett's shown some good numbers. I know he came up last week and Brooke brought him up. So on that note, we'll go to Brooke. Brooke, who do you think we'll see first from the non-rostered prospects make it into the lineup here?
I don't know if I can say this, but I guess I will. Can I say Hagel? I mean, I know technically he was on our roster before, but I don't know if he'll make the roster out of camp. I don't know. But I'm gonna say Hagel, only because we've been hearing so much about him lately, and the scouts describing him with his relentlessness and competitiveness and his scoring ability kind of makes me excited. So I'm gonna say him, and maybe a dark horse I would say would be Kalynuk, maybe, because I don't know. I don't think he'll make it probably out of camp, only because we do have such a huge pool right now. But so those are my two picks, I think.
Yeah, those are solid picks all around. I mean, Kalynuk's to me a dark horse. I really like him though. I think he's got a lot of potential there, and they talk a lot about his leadership, and I think that's key. So they might look to him sooner than later. Gail, what do you think?
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry.
or can we say Pius Suter or Ian Mitchell? I mean, they're not on the roster.
I'm going to, so go ahead.
Right? I mean, I think that those are kind of obvious, and it's almost, none of us are saying them because I think we all just assume, and everybody's already kind of writing them in, that Suter's going to be on one of the top six, and Ian Mitchell's going to be next to Duncan Keith or next to Nikita Zadorov. But I guess if I was, and maybe I can't say this either because he played 6 games last year, but I really like Lucas Carlson, defenseman Lucas Carlson. He played in 6 games last year, and I just think he wasn't flashy, but he was consistent, and he did what the Blackhawks needed him to do, and that's come in and be responsible in the defensive end, and then get the puck up the ice and transition it to the offensive end. So I think that he'll be one of the first of the defensemen when they need an extra guy.
Yeah, I mean, great. I'm glad we're all mentioning different names here. Hopefully we're creating a little bit more excitement in Blackhawk world to realize that it is not all bleak and it won't all be bad for the years to come. Segueing from who you already touched on, Gail, I'm going to say Pius Suter. Technically, he is not a rostered player right now, but I think it is more obvious than not that he will be. So I'm gonna go with the safe bet here and say that Suter will make the lineup. He's one of the more accomplished of the prospects. Obviously, most of his experience being overseas, but he did play in the O with Guelph for a few years and did quite well, especially in his last year with them. He's poised to get into NHL action and have an immediate impact, and I think the Hawks are going to be looking for that. So I think he's right, primed and ready to get into that lineup and really make a name for himself right out the gate. As a former Swiss League MVP, it'd be great to see how he can translate that into NHL action as well. And I mean, as timely as it is, just today he had 2 assists in Zurich's game and helped them into the Swiss Cup semifinal. So all signs point to good things for Suter and for all the prospects we mentioned. So I think some exciting times ahead, more than we probably realize, given, again, some of these off-season blunders. But I think this team does have some players in their pipeline that will excite us along the way. And speaking of roster moves and roster revisions and change-ups, a topic that I brought up in our preview post that I wanted to tease a little bit and make sure that we didn't spoil our reasons why, because I thought it'd be a lot more fun to get a chance to see our live reactions and why we chose who we chose, is our start bench trade segment. As we often resort to, playing general manager or coach for this team seems to be an effective way for us to all alleviate some frustrations, even if just temporarily. So out of Adam Boqvist, Kirby Dach, and Dominic Kubalik, we were each asked to assign them accordingly. One would start, one would be benched, and the third would be traded. Now is your time and our time to not only mention who we chose, but why. I will start this one off, get the ball rolling, and say that I'm going to start Dach. For obvious reasons, I want to give him as much runway as possible to continue his progress, continue growing in confidence, and really let him take over this leadership role that I think is naturally coming to him and I think will be his in the years to come. So I want to let him keep producing, keep getting in game action, and keep him out there as much as I possibly can and as much as he wants to stay out there. I'm going to bench Kubalik, and not because he did anything wrong, but simply because I think he's already proven himself. And again, I'll say I don't think last year was a fluke. I think that he is a legit NHL star, and I think that he can be patient now. He's a little bit of an older sophomore player, so to speak, but I think he knows that he's already proven himself and he doesn't have to do as much as the young guys do. So I think he can be patient, sit on the bench, wait for his turn, and wait for when he's called upon, because I think his spot is solidified. As far as who I'd trade, obviously that leaves one remaining. Boqvist would be the guy. As a recent top 10 pick, I know we haven't seen as much out of him as we've all hoped, but he's, again, still extremely young, and I think there's a lot of upside to his game, and I think a lot of fans looking in believe that as well. Teams are always looking for defense, and he could very well be the piece that an organization thinks they're missing for what they can do to get to their next level. Whereas the Blackhawks, we've mentioned them in our prospects section here, have a lot of defense already. And I honestly think as much upside as Boqvist has, I think he's easily replaceable by some of the prospects we have. So I think he could be an easy trade target for a team who might be looking to bring somebody in and help grow with their team to get to their next level, while the Hawks won't really miss him much. So that's where I go with it. But Gail, where do you go?
Okay, so it's kind of good that I'm coming right after you, because I also wanted to, didn't want to. I don't want to trade any of these people, but you said I had to. So I went with Boqvist as the trade as well, just because, again, he struggled last year. And like you mentioned, there's so many other people in the pipeline. So that made the most sense based upon these three. But where I went different from you is that I feel that Kubalik is the one that should start. And the reason I say that is because he's a little bit older. He's 25 years old. He's coming off a 30-goal season. He's a top guy. Put him out there. Let him play. Let him run with it. He obviously did a great job last season, and just keep him doing that. The reason that I have, and of course, obviously Doc is the guy that we know is going to be a leader, and we want him to grow. So in my mind, the having him sit and be patient and being benched, let's kind of keep it, how Colleton does that, where he says, okay, I'm going to have you be a healthy scratch tonight. We're going to sit down. We're going to go through the film. We're going to have you watch and observe, and you're going to learn from that. And Doc does have still a lot to learn. There's a learning curve, and he's got a high ceiling. So that was my reasoning towards starting Kubalik versus Doc, and then having Doc be the one to kind of sit and be patient.
Interesting stance. Greg, what about you?
When I first read your question and I saw the exercise, like, oh, this is cool. And then I saw the three names. I was like, you son of a. So I start Doc. That he's the future star. He's the guy, and he's starting to show signs. We saw that progression he made from the season pause to when he showed up at the bubble, and you were like, wow. I mean, he's got that rare combination of size, speed, and skill you just don't see, especially out of a teenager. So that's the guy. He is one of three players that need to be the foundation and the cornerstone for when this team is, if and when they become cup contenders again. He's going to be the driving force behind that. In my opinion, the three main guys are Doc, DeBrincat, and the guy I'm benching, Adam Boqvist. You can't trade him at this point. That's just, there's not another Nylander brother to trade him for anyway. But you didn't draft him 7th overall to trade him in a year. I mean, even for Bowman's love of trading first round picks, you can't do it. Yeah, he struggled in the NHL, but he's a teenager and playing in the NHL for the first time. I don't think they did him any services by calling him up as early as they did. In Rockford, he was really progressing well. He wasn't so worried about making mistakes that he got involved offensively, and you got to see the dynamic offensive player that he can be. And we don't have, yes, we have a very deep defensive prospect pool right now, but we don't have a defensive prospect that can be as dynamic on offense as Boqvist. It's not even close. What that kid is capable of, and it's the easy comparison, but it's a valid comparison. He could be an Erik Karlsson-esque offensive defenseman. Obviously, there's a long way to go. So that's why you bench him. You show patience with your first round draft picks. I know that's been very hard for Stan Bowman, but you have to show your patience here. So therefore, that leaves Kubalik as the trade. Now, I'm not advocating a trade for him. I'm not saying we need to trade him, but out of those three, that's the guy that gets traded just for the fact that he's the oldest. When this team gets that window open again, if, he could be 28, 29 years old at that point. So is he going to be a part of that? And his contract, very friendly, very term is money. That's a very attractive contract on the trade market. And when you think about it, you get him 2 years at very good value. And at the end of that second year, he's still a restricted free agent. That's very attractive. So I think he would bring in, obviously the other two guys would bring in major returns too, but you're not trading either of those two guys, at least I'm not. So those are my choices.
Fair enough. And I agree. I think Kubalik would obviously bring in a good return. I think we need to keep him around because I think even as a 29-year-old, I think he's going to do some damage, and I think the Hawks are going to need that. But good picks all around. And Brooke.
Okay, so I have the same answers as Greg, but I might have different reasonings than Greg a little bit. One, I want to let everyone know that we're being held hostage by Shaun. We don't want to make these decisions, but we have to, and there's nothing we can do about it. So we're trying our best, okay? I want to start Doc only because he's our future. He's what the team hopes to have for the next decade. So I'm going to say start him because of all the reasons you guys said. The guy's a good player. He's dynamic. I don't see a reason why you shouldn't start him at this point. I would bench Boqvist, but I don't mean this in a way that I don't like him because I do. But he has had growing pains. We kind of expect that from him because he was put in a very high pressure situation where he was just kind of thrown in there. And we all know how hard it is to develop defensemen. It takes time. So I would say bench him, but I don't want to be insulting about that. It's just more like let him grow and see where that goes. And if he doesn't, then maybe he will be expendable at some point. But right now, like Greg said, be patient. I don't know how patient the Hawks are willing to be with him, but that is the best way to go. And trade Kubalik because I think out of the three, he would bring in the best return at this point. I guess Kirby would if you traded him, but realistically, everyone knows that Kubalik right now was kind of the hidden gem that no one realized would just be this explosive. So I would trade him. If I had, I don't want to, but out of the three, I would say that right now. I don't want to trade any of these people. Just, it's hard, Shaun. You put us in a hard situation.
Well, I appreciate that I caused a little bit of confusion and at least some engagement here to get us all thinking and on our toes. And on that note, I am happy that, we all obviously see a lot of progress and a lot of potential in a lot of these stars here, specifically Doc. So hopefully the undertone of this episode has been that there is some positives down the road. We might not see them right away, but they're coming. Some of them are already here, and players like Doc and Kubalik and even Boqvist, they're already here. They're already playing. So the team might not be performing as we want them to collectively, but these pieces are fun to watch, fun to follow, fun to cheer for. So that will wrap up our episode 4. And we want to thank you for joining us. And we hope that we'll see you next week for episode 5 of Blackhawks Banter. As always, it's been our pleasure to get the opportunity to talk all things Blackhawks with you, our viewers. Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us across social media, and check out our latest Blackhawks coverage at thehockeywriters.com. We each have an author's page, which will show all of our recent work. We welcome and encourage you guys to check it out. And just to touch on and conclude, one of the things I love most about our crew here at the Blackhawks team is that we all have a passion for this team. We all love what this team is doing, but we're all fans first and foremost. So we have varied opinions, which is cool, and you see that firsthand. But at the end of the day, we're all fans and we're all cheering for the same thing. So it's cool that we can all share that appreciation, and you guys should head on over to thehockeywriters.com and experience that yourselves. So thanks again. Thanks to Gail, Greg, Brooke, and thank you from me. And we hope to see you next week on episode 5. Thanks a lot, everybody.